have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
Today, thousands went to the Lincoln Memorial to celebrate that very moment. You can see them holding signs that read, "I have a dream." They were also accompanied by a bus used during the segregation era called the Civil Rights Museum on Wheels. The group ended their walk at the Washington Monument.
And joining us tonight is Reverend Talbert Swan, just back from spending the weekend in Washington. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Reverend Swan. So you were there this weekend. Tell me about it. It must have been very emotional, very moving for you.
Absolutely. It was quite an experience to go back on the anniversary of the march and to stand where so many stood 50 years ago and to reminisce about that historic march, but also to deal with the issues of concern of today, which are very similar to the concerns that they had 50 years ago during the March on Washington.
Now, I have to imagine you did speak to some people down there maybe who were there 50 years ago. Did they have anything to say, or did you speak to anyone?
I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with Congressman John Lewis. As a matter of fact, I spoke with him when he was here in Springfield campaigning for Elizabeth Warren. He is the last surviving speaker from the original March on Washington. And, you know, he basically said that he gave some of his blood on that bridge in Selma, Alabama, so many years ago so that we could have voting rights, etc. And he is just as determined today to ensure that those rights are maintained as he was 50 years ago for us to acquire those rights in the first place.
What was the mood down there? We spoke to a woman this evening. We'll hear more from her later in the newscast from Agawam, who said while Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was speaking, you could have heard a pin drop. There were murmurs, but the crowd was very respectful, you know, very honoring of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What was the mood down there 50 years later? More jubilant, I assume.
Well, it definitely was more celebratory concerning the gains that have been made, but there was still very serious in terms of knowing that we still have the need for jobs and justice in America today. There's no orator like Dr. King, and I don't think there ever will be, but they were very attentive to the speakers that were there and very committed to the causes that were being espoused.
You know, we talk about the people who were there 50 years ago, but what about, you know, the young people today who are still learning the history and who are seeing, or maybe take for granted the changes that have been made? I know you've been having these panels and things marking the 50th anniversary and trying to bring young people into that discussion. What do you think is the important thing to hit home for them?
I think they need to know that all of the freedoms that they enjoy today were obtained by the sacrifice of others, that people sacrificed their lives, they sacrificed their livelihood, their families, so that all of America can be afforded the same privileges. And I think that's the important takeaway from young people, that they have an America where they have certain rights and privileges that everyone didn't always have, and they need to know the history of that so that they can appreciate it.
And speaking more to that, 50 years from that historic event, our first African-American president today addressed the crowd at the same spot. What do you think Dr. King would say? He'd be happy, but we still have a ways to go. Agree?
Absolutely. I think Dr. King would be ecstatic at the fact that we have made progress in certain areas in America. None so much as the first African-American president of the United States. But he would also look at the fact that 50 years later, unemployment is at 12.6 in the, 7.6 in the African-American community at 13%. He would also look at the wide range of disparities between health care, between how people are incarcerated, etc. And he would say that America still has a long way to go, that we definitely have not arrived in this post-racial America that many people say that we're in.
Okay, Reverend Swan, thank you for being with us. We should mention, too, the parade that's happening in Springfield Saturday, I believe, starting at Rebecca Johnson's school.
Absolutely.
That's
part of the Stone Soul Festival, 10 a.m. We'll be marching over to Blunt Park, and we'll be celebrating.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Reverend Swan. You going next year?
Absolutely. We'll go and keep going until we get justice.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
So much.
Appreciate your time.